Welcome back to the Nursing Post podcast, All Nursing All the Time with Ashley and Rosa. With Alcohol Awareness Month here, today's episode is on alcohol and the effects it can have on your body. Our goal is always to inform and spark conversation.
I really wanted to approach this topic a little bit differently than I think most people would approach it. And instead of bringing awareness just to like basic alcohol awareness, I wanted to make sure that people actually understood the implications that heavy alcohol use, especially long-term heavy alcohol use, what those implications really are. And there are several different organizations that have different criteria for what they consider to be heavy drinking. They're all very similar, but for today's podcast, we're going to use the numbers from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. So that's the NIAAA. For heavy drinking, men and women are different in all of these. So you are considered a heavy drinker if you're a man that has more than 4 drinks a day or more than 14 drinks a week. For women, it's more than 3 drinks a day or 7 drinks per week. For binge drinking, this specifically is a blood alcohol content of 0.08 or higher. And that usually happens if men have more than 5 drinks in a 2-hour period, and if women have more than 4 drinks in a 2-hour period. So if you are a woman and you go out every Saturday night and have 5 or 6 beers, you are not necessarily considered a heavy drinker. You are then considered a binge drinker.
I think people also need to take into consideration, like every state is different, but in the state of Virginia, if you blow a 0.08 and you're operating a vehicle, you are driving while intoxicated.
Yes.
Or, under the influence. Some places it's a DWI or a DUI. It just depends on where you're from. So when you take that into consideration, if you're at the bar and you're having a drink or two, like you need to keep in the back of your head and in the back of your mind that if you get behind the wheel of the car and you get pulled over, I'm going to say by a miracle, because it's dangerous, you can kill somebody, you know what I mean? And you get pulled over, the chances of you blowing is going to be great. Like you're going to blow that legal limit of 0.08.
Yes.
And I don't think people realize that. Like they're like, oh, I'll just go to the bar, have a drink or two and be home in like an hour. No, boo. Like you have to call an Uber or a Lyft. Like you cannot get behind the wheel of your car and go driving down the road and thinking that you're not drunk because you are.
Right. And that's exactly right. And that's pretty much what these are based off of as well. And the last little category is just high intensity drinking. And this is men that have more than 10 drinks in one setting, or women who have more than 8 drinks in a setting. And, this is like the same, like 1.5 ounces of liquor, 6 ounces of wine, or 8 ounces of beer or something like that. I'm not exactly sure on all those numbers, but that's what a drink is.
Yeah, that's the equivalent. I'm not a drinker, so I couldn't tell you. All I know is that if you have 2 drinks of anything, like you shouldn't be driving anywhere.
Right. Well, and I think that depending on the type of beer and what the, alcohol content is of that, it depends on, whether it's 6 ounces, 8 ounces, 1.5 to 2 ounce shots, whatever. But ultimately, just be mindful.
I think we also kind of need to like put a side note in the difference of why it's more for men than it is for women. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, right where it says 4 drinks a day or 14 a week. And then for women, it's like less than that, 3 drinks a day or 7 days a week. And that's because of muscle and body mass is different between a man and a woman. And so that's why it varies. That's why if you're a woman and you're like drinking and holding the par to a man, you might want to reflect.
In a lot of cases, now, not every case. I know that there are women out there that are bigger than men. Yes, I understand that. But the way our body works and metabolizes is different, period. I mean, there are differences between men and women.
As we were talking, like alcohol affects the entire body. There are many studies that have shown light to moderate alcohol use is actually beneficial and lowers the risk of CVD. But the problem lies when the scales tip. Like, everything is great in moderation. It's like when you go over that moderation. So what we'll do is we'll go over some of the body's systems and what that equates for people who are heavy alcohol users or are abusing alcohol.
Exactly. So these aren't for people that have light, like if you having a couple of glasses of wine a week or a month or a year. These don't apply to you.
Yeah, like if you're a social drinker, this doesn't apply to you either.
So for the brain, I think that most of us that have had alcohol or been around anybody with alcohol know that you get the slurred speech, the reduced coordination, your balance is off. All those things happen, but we're focusing more on long term. And alcohol can really affect your brain's ability to make long-term memories. And research is now linking alcohol intake and dementia, because your brain actually shrinks and you also have a loss of gray and white matter. And that can develop into Alzheimer's. We did an episode on Alzheimer's.
Early on in our podcast. Yeah.
And we explained a little bit of that. And it can cause damage to the frontal lobe of the brain. And that part of the brain is responsible for your impulse control, judgment, and short-term memory. And you can see how alcohol affects your frontal lobe, not necessarily long-term, but in the short term. Like, you make different decisions, you make bad judgment calls when you're drunk. And so when you are constantly intoxicated, that is just doing.
It's compounding the issue. Yeah, it's just compounding the issue.
It can decrease your ability to learn, and it can also cause issues with sleep because it does suppress your REM sleep. And then the mental health side of alcohol is alcohol can create many types of psychiatric problems. You have alcohol-induced bipolar disorder, psychosis, sleep disorder, depression, and anxiety.
And I just want to put a side note in. A lot of people that already have mental health issues, such as like depression, anxiety, bipolar, psychotic disorder, like that's already a chemical imbalance and why you're taking medication. So if you're taking medication already for these disorders, you're not supposed to mix alcohol with them.
Correct.
When you drink alcohol, it affects that imbalance in the chemicals. So you can imagine now what you've done on top of the medication that you're taking to keep your chemical imbalance balanced.
Yeah.
And then you're drinking on top of it. It's
Russian roulette.
Yes. You're playing a game of 50-50 heads or tails.
For cardiovascular disease, we see this a lot, and a lot of people can get upset when we ask them about their alcohol use at work, because I work for a cardiology office. But alcohol increases your heart rate and dilates your blood vessels. This is why when you get drunk, you get hot. It can cause high blood pressure, heart arrhythmias, heart failure, stroke, heart attacks, and it does increase your risk for cardiovascular disease or CVD. And when you are constantly feeding yourself alcohol, you're keeping your heart at a faster pace and you're dilating everything. These are going to cause long-term problems like high blood pressure, and eventually it's going to lead to heart failure. We see a lot of cardiomyopathy. It's alcohol-induced cardiomyopathy. And it's just where it's just taxing on your heart.
We know it does cause liver issues like cirrhosis, which is a chronic inflammation of your liver. It leaves fatty deposits on your liver. There's a such thing called alcoholic hepatitis and fibrosis. And that's like little tumors and cysts on your liver. As nurses, we know that the liver and the kidneys filter. So when you hear people say like you are what you eat or you are what you drink, it's literal because your body takes it in, absorbs it, and then it has to filter it out. So you can imagine already knowing what the effects of alcohol does to your brain. So if you're a heavy drinker, what that's doing to your liver.
Mm-hmm. Your pancreas is affected. You can get pancreatitis from alcohol use. And just to kind of go into how that affects long term, your pancreas is what's responsible for keeping your blood sugar levels even. It secretes when it needs to, it doesn't when it's not supposed to. And when you're damaging your pancreas, what's going to happen is you're going to either start to have issues with hyperglycemia or hypoglycemia, and then eventually that's going to lead to diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
When you're diabetic, that's because your pancreas
and
is not working correctly.
it does have effects on the digestive system, gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation. It can lead to ulcers. It can make ulcers that you already have worse. It can definitely affect the absorption of food. So that can then lead to anemia, which leads to fatigue. And if you're not taking vitamins to kind of replenish, because you can take a multivitamin, you're setting yourself pretty much up for anemia amongst some other vitamin deficiencies. And from dehydration and constipation, you can develop hemorrhoids. That saying, shit and get off the pot or get off the pot. Yeah. Like it's a true statement.
It is a true statement.
It really is a true statement. The longer you sit there, the longer you're giving yourself hemorrhoids. Yeah. So you have to shit or get off the pot. And alcohol, it does a number on your stomach.
It really does. Not only for those, this may be the one that like hits home for a lot of people that can like jar their thing, is it affects your sexual health pretty substantially. It can decrease libido. For men, it can cause impotence or failure to get an erection, difficulty achieving orgasms. It can mess with your hormones, which for ladies can cause issues with menstruation and even in their fertility.
It affects general health by just decreasing bone density, and it decreases your immune system. How can your body naturally fight a common cold or the flu if you're using alcohol heavily when it's doing all of this to your body?
Yeah, it's too busy trying to fix what you're doing.
Yeah, it's trying to maintain homeostasis that it can't fight off like the common cold or flu.
One of the things that I thought was really interesting in an article that I read was about alcohol causing cancer. And the first thing I, kind of went to was, I know alcohol is really taxing on your liver because that's what's filtering it. So that would be the first thing that popped into my head. And really the main one, but that's not the case. Rose and I both have the belief that if you live long enough, you're going to end up with cancer somewhere.
Mm-hmm. I think there was a study that said that in one of our episodes back in the day.
And the National Cancer Institute even says that you are at greater risk of developing head, neck, esophageal, liver, breast, and or colorectal cancer from heavy alcohol use. And I was like, man,
that's a lot of, cancer.
Yeah, well, and I mean, a lot of that, if you think about it, has to do with just ingestion. When you're thinking of your mouth, your neck, your esophagus, your liver, colorectal, I mean, a lot of those, that's just the process of eliminating stuff going in and out of your body. So the theories that scientists currently have to link between alcohol and cancer are the way that your body is metabolizing it or breaking down the alcohol, which is ethanol. It breaks down the ethanol to acetaldehyde, which is a toxic chemical and a probable carcinogen to us humans, which is just a cancer-causing chemical
agent. Yeah.
And it can damage DNA and proteins, and that's what's needed to regenerate good, healthy cells. That's your building block of cell. Like that's everything that you need there. They also think that generating reactive oxygen species, which is a chemical reactive molecules that contain oxygen, which can damage DNA, proteins, and lipids in the body through a process called oxidation. So again, we're back to your DNA, your basic cell stuff that you need. It impairs the body's ability to break down and absorb a variety of nutrients. We talked about that earlier with the digestion. These things like vitamin A, vitamin B complex, folate, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, all these things, all these minerals and nutrients and vitamins are needed. That's what helps us live a healthy lifestyle. And if your body cannot break it down and absorb it because of the alcohol, it's going to cause problems. Alcohol increases blood levels of estrogen, which is a sex hormone that puts you at risk for breast cancer. I mean, that's something that I know a lot of the females are probably aware of just from routine OBGYN appointments. And then alcohol beverages also contain a variety of carcinogenic items, chemicals, that are used during the fermentation, the process of making alcohol. Those like nitrates, asbestos fibers, things like that, we know that they cause problems, but here we are again.
Putting it into our bodies.
Yeah. And so in a way, people may say, oh, well, there's chemicals in everything that we eat and everything that we do. That's very true. But hopefully you're not binging on a bag of Doritos 12 times a week.
A day. Well, yeah, it says it says men drinking more than 10 drinks in one setting. I cannot physically eat 10 bags of potato chips in one setting.
Right. And I mean, there's all different kinds of, what is it? Hot dogs are known carcinogenic.
Yes. Because they have nitrates as well.
Right. Yeah. And so, but we're not eating those every day, all day long. The whole point of being healthy is that you have balance with things that are good for you, things that are not so good for you. And then if you add any kind of like tobacco use to alcohol, the risk of developing cancer, of course, is even greater.
How many people do you know that do both? I mean, I can raise my hand.
Like they only smoke when they drink. That's the only time that they smoke. And honestly, that's probably partially how I started smoking. And it just kind of,
Yeah, that's how it starts, I think, for everybody.
Yeah. So, which I'm not smoking anymore. So, no.
No, we've quit. We are former smokers. Yeah, we don't smoke. It's not good for you. Neither is vaping. That's a whole other episode you can look up. So what happens to your body when you decide, oh my gosh, okay, I think I have a problem? Or, January, they list that as dry January, which means like you go sober for the whole month because you were kind of like maybe partying too much around the holidays. So you want to start fresh for the new year and like be dry. That's good and everything. But if you were like binging, like we were talking about up here, you're going to want to seek some medical attention before you decide to go dry. Yeah. And if you're an alcoholic or a heavy drinker, period, you always want to seek medical attention prior to quitting, because we know alcohol withdrawal is a thing. It's a serious thing. And it is one of the most difficult detoxifications of any substance abused. And we're going to go ahead and discuss some of the signs and symptoms that come with alcohol withdrawal and what happens mildly and what happens severely. I know in nursing school, they tell you like nursing 101. I always go back to my nursing 101 because there are things that, they kind of ingrain into your brain and tell you over and over again. And one of those things is that They will say it's hard to say that people will die from withdrawing from a drug, let's say heroin or cocaine or something along those lines. Like you can detox from that, and that will not be the cause of death, period. Like on your death certificate, that will not come up. It will probably be listed secondary to, like maybe you had a heart attack from the use of it, and
Right.
that will be on your death certificate, but it
You may
won't.
want to die because you feel so bad.
Yes, but yeah, you won't. But it's different with alcohol. You can. It's that severe. It's something that you have to be weaned off of, and it's a gradual process. And that's why we encourage people to seek medical and professional help, that you should not be doing this home alone by yourself. Some of the signs and symptoms of alcohol withdrawal include headache, mild to moderate tremors, irritability, anxiety, and agitation. And those are some of the mild ones. Mm-hmm. But when we start talking about severe withdrawal, 10% of most patients will experience severe manifestations of withdrawal. And that would include delirium, hallucinations, seizures, insomnia, fatigue, mood changes, GI disturbances, heart palpitations, high blood pressure, hyperthermia, which we all know is, makes you hot, you're hotter, rapid abnormal breathing, and 5 to 25% of people die from DTs or detoxing. So this is why we say if you or anyone you know needs, help from alcohol, wanting to quit, or substance abuse, to make sure that you consult a medical professional.
And in our opinion, there's not enough resources and centers to help with substance abuse issues. There is help, and there is a national hotline, and it is the SAMHSA's National Helpline, and that is 1-800-662-HELP or 1-800-662-4357. And this is also known as the Treatment Referral Rounding Service. You can also send a text message to 435-748, and that's also Help for You. Or you can call toll free 800-487-4889, and that is a confidential and free service that is open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. There are services in English and Spanish, and for individuals and family members facing mental or substance use disorders. And this service provides referrals to local treatment facilities, support groups, community-based organizations.
You can visit our show notes at thenursingpostpodcast.com. You can also visit our store and shop our merchandise. You can subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, and please share your thoughts and comments. We really do appreciate the time that people put in, and with the feedback and the comments, we do read those. And thanks again for listening to The Nursing Post.